Hey guys, what's up? So welcome to the new video to do with the rares that you can find within Duel Links of the pack, which is Sorcerer. The first card is Altergeist Dragvirian. It's a Dark Spellcaster Synchro, level 6 with 2200 attack and 1200 defense. It requires a tuner and one or more non-tuners, so it's a generic monster. And its effect is when a special summoned monster your opponent controls declares an attack, you can return one Altergeist monster you control to the hand, negate that attack. If this card is tributed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it. You can only use each effect of Altergeist Dragvirian once per turn. So its stats aren't particularly great. A 2200 attack. You do have level 6 synchro monsters such as Yugioh Guardian, which are more powerful. The ability to negate an attack is decent. However, this only works on special summoned monsters. If your opponent is smart enough to, say, reduce this monster's attack through something like Gale the Whirlwind, or find some way of increasing their monster's attack, such as Power of the Guardian, you just equip that to a monster with 1800 attack or more, and you can essentially just run over this card just like that, while still remaining with the attack stat boost. Returning the Altergeist monster to the hand can be useful in the point that their effects sometimes trigger when they're normal summoned, so you've got that interaction. And of course, I would assume the second part of its effect will have some link to some of the spell and trap support it has, where it could be tributed and then brought back. My issue with this is it's just quite slow, it's not that feasible of an effect, and there are cards which aren't particularly bothered by being returned to the hand. What springs to mind is some of the Blue Eyes cards. A lot of them get like graveyard support to bring out the Blue Eyes White Dragons again during the following turn, or even on that turn. The next card is Hi-Speedroid Hagorita. This is a Wind Machine Synchro, level 5 with 2000 attack and 1000 defense. It requires a tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters, and its effect is during either player's turn, you contribute this card, increase the levels of all monsters currently on the field by 1 until the end of this turn. If this card is in your graveyard and you control the Speedroid tuner monster, you can special summon this card. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except wind monsters. You can only use this effect of Hi-Speedroid Hagorita once per turn. So the whole point of this card is it's quite a generic monster. It can be used to help adjust levels of your monsters to bring out stronger synchro monsters through the first effect. I don't understand why you would use this effect on your opponent's turn, considering it's not that useful. I mean, you can't really synchro in their turn. There are a couple of spell and traps that can, but they're not that useful, and it could end up making the deck a bit too cloggy. The second effect is quite decent to recover it if you have a Speedroid tuners, as there are quite a few in the Speedroid archetype. And of course, this could be useful in bringing out Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Saying that, we don't actually have the monster in Duel Links as of yet. The best bet I would imagine would be something like Stardust Dragon, as that's a wind attribute, or Mistworm. You've got a couple of other monsters out there, but the wind attribute isn't particularly the most specific or most supported of the different attributes when it comes to synchro monsters. The next card is Hi-Speedroid Puzzle. This is a Wind Machine Synchro monster with 1300 attack and 1600 defense, and it's a level 4. It requires one tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters. and the effect is at the start of the damage step. If this card battles a special summoned monster, you can make this card's attack become double its current attack until the end of the damage step. Once per turn during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because this synchro summoned card was sent there from the field this turn, you can target one Speedroid monster in your graveyard except Hi-Speedroid puzzle and add it to your hand. Okay, so my opinion on this card is it's not that useful. 1300 attack is not particularly threatening. If anyone knows what the card does, they're not going to be stupid enough to attack you with a special summon monster. If they do, well, that's their fault. This will become 2600 attack. Essentially, anything over 1300 can just wipe this out just by normal summoning it and going into the battle phase. The second effect is the graveyard effect, and I think it's kind of necessary for it to have this effect. For a level 4, it's very weak as a synchro monster. I much prefer Armory Arm because at least that has some effect damage to it, and it gives it a bit of a stat boost. This just helps to recover one of your Speedroid monsters, although saying that, you probably used the Speedroid to summon this in the first place. My advice would be not to run this if you can kind of help it. You okay, Dudley? The next card is Basilius, Familiar of the Evil Eye. This is a Dark Fiend level 3 with 400 attack and 2000 defense. Its effect is, if you control an Evil Eye monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon one Basilius, Familiar of the Evil Eye, once per turn. This way, during your main phase, you can send one Evil Eye spell or trap card from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Basilius, Familiar of the Evil Eye, once per turn. This card is really not that useful. I suppose it can be like a foolish burial of goods to send one of your spell or traps with the Evil Eye in its name to the graveyard, and therefore you could probably recover it through other effects, such as through the castle, which was the field spell, which was mentioned in the previous video. Other than that, it's quite a weak card. I suppose you can just use it as a set and pass if necessary, but otherwise it's not the most advantageous to kind of run. The next card is Predaplant Spinodionia. It's a Dark Plant level 4 with 1800 attack and 0 defense. Its effect is, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, place one Predaplant counter on it, and if it is level 2 or higher, it becomes level 1 as long as it has a Predator counter. After damage calculation, if this card battles a monster with an equal or lower level, you can special summon one Predaplant monster from your deck, except a copy of itself. Right, the way the Predaplants work is actually to do with level interaction. You can give these, basically you can give your opponent's monsters these Predator counters, and as long as they have them, they instantly become level 1. This helps to kind of reduce the effectiveness of any of the synchro-based decks. So if your opponent is running anything like for Black Rose Dragon, Red Dragon Archfiend, Stardust Dragon, Power Tool Dragon, Ancient Fairy Dragon, the Yugioh Guardians, any of those that are very heavily consistent and reliant on decent level monsters, by doing this you can actually interrupt their levels. And actually, I would say even though this only works when it's normal or special summoned, the whole point of the deck is actually you can obviously send this to the graveyard and then probably recover it at some later point, so you can continually put Predator counters on. The ability to, of course, special summon a Predaplant from the deck is also useful to go further into your combos. It's definitely a staple within the deck. The next card is Predaplant Chlamydosundew. This is a dark plant level 2 with 600 attack and 200 defense. And its effect is monsters with a predator counter that you use as fusion materials are treated as dark. During your main phase, you can fusion summon one dark fusion monster from your extra deck using this card on the field, and monsters from your hand, field, and or monsters with a predator counter your opponent controls as fusion materials. You can only use this effect of Predaplant Chlamydosundew once per turn. So the whole point of this is you can use your opponent's monsters in order to trigger your fusion summons. However, it does rely on you only bringing out dark fusion monsters. It's not an issue with this deck. That's kind of what it does. Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. You also have the Chimera Flesia. That's the main fusion monsters you kind of go into from this. There's probably others that I can't think of as of now, and there's more generic fusions out there that also you can receive through this. It's a very useful way of using your opponent's monsters, because by doing this you prevent often effects from triggering, and also it removes monsters that might be a little bit more difficult to remove from the field normally. Say, for example, your opponent has a Blue Eyes White Dragon on the field, or something which has some kind of protection attached to it. The common one is Power of the Guardian. In this case, that wouldn't work, and actually this effect helps to override some of these more difficult effects that you're having to deal with, that your opponent is running. This is definitely a staple and something you need to run within the deck. So next we have Battle Wasp Arbalest, the Rapid Fire. This is a level 4 wind insect monster with 1800 attack and 800 defense. Its effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can target one level 3 or lower insect monster in your graveyard. Special summon that monster in defense position. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can special summon one Battle Wasp monster from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Battle Wasp Arbalest, the Rapid Fire, once per turn. It's a decent monster for the archetype. It's a very short archetype that was used in the Arc 5 series. Within the 5th series, it's used by a character that is actually a good person in the synchro dimension. Its effect to be able to actually bring out a lower level insect monster is okay, and you can kind of splash that into different archetypes. Say, for example, you do have those ultimate insect, which could use its effect, because this doesn't negate that effect. It doesn't negate what it recovers, so you can always use it that way. And actually being able to bring out another Battle Wasp monster from either your hand or your deck provides you with a bit more consistency and more options to go into as and when you decide you kind of need to. It's a way of just extending your plays just to bring out whatever you need. So we have the next card as Speedroid Double Yo-Yo. This is a Wind Machine level 4 with 1400 attack and 1400 defense. Its effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can target one level 3 or lower Speedroid monster in your graveyard, and you can special summon it. So if you can bring back one of your tuner monsters, you can synchro summon into the level 4, the level 5, or the level 6 synchro monsters that are currently available. Of the three, I just think Kendama, the level 6, is the most useful, and so this is basically a one card version. If you've been in the duel for a little bit of time, or some of them do let you send some of these monsters to the graveyard just to kind of set you up to go into your synchro summon much easier. So the next card we have is Speedroid Kid. This is a Wind Machine level 3 with 1000 attack and 200 defense. Its effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can target one tuner monster in either player's graveyard, special summon it to your side of the field, and if you do immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon one wind synchro monster using that monster and this card only. So the 3 synchro monsters that you have available as of now are all able to kind of be used from this effect. My problem with this is you are going to have to guarantee what your opponent is playing. If they are playing a deck such as, I don't know, Heroes, for example, they're not going to be running anything like this. They're not going to be running any tuner monsters, and therefore this effect isn't going to be useful to you at all. This card is an out to certain decks, but it's also a significant weakness if you don't have the cards necessary to run for it, or your opponent, if they don't have synchro monsters or tuner monsters, then this is a bit of a waste. The next card is Speedroid Red-Eyed Dice. This is a Wind Machine tuner, level 1 with 100 attack and 100 defense. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one Speedroid monster you control, except itself, and declare a level from 1 to 6. It becomes that level until the end of this turn. The whole point of this is being able to adjust in levels. Means you can go into either the level 4, 5 or 6 synchro monsters. By having this versatility to it, it does mean you can use the relevant synchro monster depending on whatever your needs are. It's also good that it's whenever it's normal or special summoned, because if it was just normal summon, then you just have to bring it out by summoning it. With special summoning, at least, that means if it comes from the graveyard or from the deck, there are still interactions and it can be used more reliant. The next card is Speedroid Den Daiku Duke. It's a Wind Machine tuner, level 3, with 1000 attack and 1000 defense. Its effect is you can banish this card from your graveyard and special summon one Speedroid tuner monster from your hand or graveyard, except a copy of itself, and you can only use its effect once per turn. The main point of this is if you've already used this to tune in to synchro summon a monster, it having a graveyard effect means that you're able to bring out another tuner in which to go for either a further synchro summon with a different monster, or to synchro summon maybe using that synchro monster into a stronger synchro monster, maybe one that's a bit more generic such as Red Dragon Archfiend or whatever, depending on your situation. And the next card is called Transicada. It's a Earth Insect tuner, level 3 with 800 attack and 1000 defense. If this card is special summoned, you can special summon one Molt token, Insect Earth level 3 with 0 attack and 0 defense. While the token special summoned by this effect is on the field, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck, except insect monsters. You can only use this effect of Transicada once per turn. Now, I'm not aware of what insect synchro monsters there are currently in the game. However, this card is quite decent. The ability to be a one-turn, synchro monster, even if it, albeit restricted to just the insect type, means it's actually quite diverse. It doesn't require any setup. You just summon it and away you go. When it will have good interactions. I compare it a little bit to like Masked Chameleon, in that you're actually able to bring out a synchro monster immediately. My only concern is how many insect synchros there are currently in the game. But this shows a commitment, actually, that Konami is trying to bring out a bit more than just the traditional resonator tuner monsters, which Jack Atlas is known for. You're getting some of the newer tuner monsters, which actually have a little lot more power to them. The next card we have is the Evil Eye of Gorgoneo. This is an equipped spell, which says equip only to an Evil Eye monster. You can only activate one Evil Eye of Gorgoneo per turn. This card's name becomes Evil Eye of Selene while in the spell and trap zone. While your life points are lower than your opponent's, the equipped monster gains attack equal to the difference. You can banish this card from your graveyard and discard one Evil Eye card to add one Evil Eye spell and trap from your deck to your hand, except Evil Eye of Gorgoneo, and you can only use this effect of Evil Eye of Gorgoneo once per turn. So this is best used against matches where your opponent is trying to really recover in their life points. The Metaphys and removal decks actually use soul absorption, which gives them 500 life points every time a card is banished. And that's one of the decks actually this could be quite useful against. It can also be useful against something like Aromages, whose aim is to have more life points than you. By using this effect, you're easily able to get your monsters into very high attack points. The only trouble you're going to have is you're going to probably need to be having multiples of different equips just to make sure that your monster is protected. However, I can see if you can get it to that stage, actually you're in quite a decent position to kind of one-shot even against Aromages. The downside, of course, is this effect only happens whilst your life points are lower than your opponent's. The second if things change, or as you progress within the duel, if your life points start, the difference becomes lower, your monster's attack points become reduced as well, which is the downside of this card. The next card is Evil Eye Confrontation. This is a quick play spell card, which says if you control an Evil Eye monster, target one spell or trap card your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, and Evil Eye of Selene is in your spell and trap zone, banish that destroyed card. You can only activate one Evil Eye Confrontation per turn. This could be a little situational from the point that you might not have Evil Eye of Selene on the field, although saying that some of the equipped cards actually treat themselves as that name whilst they're in the spell and trap zone anyway. So of course banishing the card is a little better than just destroying it. There are cards that do have utility whilst they're in the graveyard, or have effects that happen if they've been sent there through the effects of a spell or trap card, such as Security Orb. If that's sent to the graveyard from the spell or trap effect, you get to destroy a card. That's the secondary effect of Security Orb. So that's quite decent. It's just it's okay removal, spell and trap removal, and it's specific to their archetype, so there's not too much to say about it. The next card is Predator Pruning. This is an equipped spell card, which is activate this card by targeting one Predator Plant monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and equip it with this card. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. This is the Predator Plant's version of something like Premature Burial. It's equipped with the card, it gets to summon. The good thing about it is, you can use its effect of the monsters. There's no negating of the effects, which is quite decent. So anything that triggers, you can gain advantage from that. Also, sometimes when they leave the field, they gain effects, so you can actually even destroy this card if necessary, if you want to trigger those effects. Or essentially it just gives you a quite decent advantage when you need to look for certain plays, especially if you've had a bit of an extended match. The next card is Summoning a Swarm. This is a normal spell card, which says target level 4 or lower Battle Lost monsters in your graveyard, up to the number of monsters your opponent controls. Special summon them. You can only activate one Summoning Swarm per turn, and you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck the turn you activate this card, except insect monsters. So at most you're able to actually summon into 3 monsters. That's okay if you can kind of synchro summon into maybe some of your higher synchro monsters, or I'm not too familiar with many insect synchros out there at the moment. There haven't been too many introduced, but from those, even within its own archetype, those are decent. Being able to do this means that actually you can go from a position where you kind of look to be losing to at least being able to kind of fight back on that. It's an okay card. Of course, there aren't actually any restrictions as to even though you can only use one of these per turn. The good thing is you don't have to summon monsters with different names or the same name. You actually have the flexibility, so long as they're battle lost monsters, which is actually okay. The next card is Speed Recovery. This is a normal spell card which says target 1 Speedroid monster in your graveyard. Special summon it during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard. You can banish this card from the graveyard, then target 1 Speedroid monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So this card has double utility to it, which is what some of the more modern cards. I know this came out in Arc 5, which is a few years ago, but this is basically almost their version of a Monster Reborn. You're able to actually go into a synchro monster a lot easier, and also by banishing this card, you're actually able to retrieve a card even if it's just to the hand. It can always be used in the next turn. The next card is Witchcrafter Holiday. This is a normal spell card which says to target 1 Witchcrafter monster in your graveyard. Special summon it during your end phase if you control a Witchcrafter monster while this card is in your graveyard. You can add this card to your hand. You can only use 1 Witchcrafter Holiday effect per turn, and only once that turn. So again, this is their equivalent to a Monster Reborn for the archetype. Being able to special summon your Witchcrafter means you keep that advantage, and of course, if you're able to maintain that Witchcrafter on the field, you of course can bring this back to the hand, so that can actually help to boost up your other monsters. Of course, the boss monster helps to boost your spellcaster monsters by just having spells in your hand. That kind of recovery is what's necessary to keep the deck functioning, and this is kind of the main way they kind of act. The next card is Witchcrafter Collaboration. This is a normal spell card which says to target 1 Witchcrafter monster you control. It can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. Also, if it attacks this turn, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards until the end of the damage step. During your end phase, if you control a Witchcrafter monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. You can only use 1 Witchcrafter Collaboration effect per turn, and only once that turn. So again, the ability to attack twice in a turn is is really good. It's no limitations. It doesn't say you can't make any direct attacks or that you can only specify monsters. It just allows for 2 attacks. Shutting down your opponent's battle traps, especially annoying things like Drowning Mirror Force, Widespread Rune, Sakuretsu Armor. All of these are actually a Dimension Prison, and that being another one, means your opponent will have very few outs to this effect. Being able to, of course, recover this as well is how the archetype likes to function. Keeping the advantage is a good way of kind of suppressing your opponent until they kind of run out of their resources. It is a bit of a stalling out game. The next card is Witchcrafter Unveiling. This is a quick play spell card, which says special summon one Witchcrafter monster from your hand, and if you do, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of your spellcaster monster effects for the rest of this turn. During your own phase, if you control a Witchcrafter monster, while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. You can only use one Witchcrafter Unveiling effect per turn, and only once per that turn. The effect to be able to bring out a Witchcrafter means you can actually go for your boss monster straight away, and your opponents aren't able to actually do much about it, and having that kind of protection is good. Of course, the recovery effect is inbuilt into most of them, just so that you can maintain your advantage. Of course, you will be running other cards, but this is specific for what the archetype likes to do. And the final card is Evil Eye Defeat. This is a normal trap card, which says if you control an Evil Eye monster, you can target one monster on the field, or up to two instead, if Evil Eye of Selene is in your spell and trap zone, and return them to the hand. You can only activate one Evil Eye Defeat per turn. So this is actually quite good for getting rid of your opponent's extra deck monsters. It's a way of getting a shot of them when you need to. Of course, it gains an additional effect if you have the Evil Eye of Selene or something that treats itself with this name. Being able to send two monsters away means that if you're in a difficult situation, this is always just a good way of kind of putting your opponent on the back foot. It's quite decent support for the archetype. What do you guys think of the rares? These are, of course, quite decent. They add to and support all of the basic themes that they're looking at. Judging from this, you've got the Predaplants, you've got the Speedroids, you have Witchcrafters, and you have, of course, the Battle Wasp as well. Is there anything you're looking forward to from these rares? Leave your comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.